Howdy again, I'm your outdoor buddy Cordell Andersen with another comeback video. Now why the comeback theme? This all has to do with the Hyena Wilderness Project that I have had since 2003, so far backpacking 1,500 miles with about 150 miles to go. Hopefully that was to be last summer, but it is now going to be the summer of 2013 in my 78th year. The problem was that all of a sudden my good left leg started making me a cripple. And so I eventually had to go in for surgery, back surgery, to have some my vertebrae straightened out and fused together, and hopefully solve that problem. But actually, it didn't really help me. I still had pain and a weakening, collapsing of the left leg, and so I was confronted with the challenge of never giving in and finding a way. And so I've done now a series of comeback videos. The first one was how to make a comeback for my 78th year, and there I talked about the problem and working out on level smooth ground that wasn't working very good, and that I also needed to find a new way of walking and hiking and running. And so I dealt with in that part one comeback video hiking along the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, and then I did part two heading for Slate Canyon on the east side of Provo, always of course in the Wasatch Mountains, to have therapy on smooth level ground as the doctor ordered. Of course I'm being sarcastic there because this is Slate Canyon and anything but smooth level ground, but to do it slowly and carefully seemed to really help. And then I did a part three that I titled Therapy on Y Mountain, Eagle Pass, and Slide Canyon, and then I moved on to part four, video number 15, which I entitled Faking Not Being a Cripple, taking you up Rock Canyon on the east side of Provo, and then all the way south to Little Rock Canyon and the crags of the Wasatch in the Springville vicinity, and dealing in that video with the rocks and minerals of the Wasatch. I think I pictured there about over 70 rocks and minerals. Very colorful, very interesting. What I want to do now is take you very quickly through the 1,500 miles of backpacking in the Hyena Wilderness to show you just why this is such an incredible area for me to work towards understanding and seeing and photographing. But it all started in 2003. After having lived in Guatemala for 40 years, and I decided before I cashed out of this life I had to explore and photograph the entire wilderness. And so I started in 2003 with a trip up East Granddaddy Mountain to see this beautiful view of Granddaddy Lake and a couple other warm-up trips, and then I took off on my 27-day expedition with 83 pounds of load on around my waist and on my back. It is to be a no resupply trip, and I had prepared for it for years, walking around my farm in Guatemala with 100 pounds of fertilizer on my back, and so I was ready for it. But that first night my football ankle and my motorcycle knee were hurting me so bad that I couldn't even sleep, and so I was reading Lance Armstrong's book, It's Not About the Pike, and it was about his defeating cancer, and that inspired me. So I'm not supporting him in what he did later, but his defeating of cancer did inspire me and had me determined that I was going to go on. And so I went on and swung through the Granddaddy Basin and the Rock Creek and over Dead Horse Pass, and then to Red Knob Pass and to Crater Lake, and then over Porcupine Pass and Tungsten Lake, and to the top of Kings Peak, and then just above my hand there's a little lake where I caught a brook trout that would be the Utah state record, and swung around the whole Uinta River Basin and down the Uinta River to to what was the U-Bar Dude Ranch at the time for needed rest. And so I made the trip, but then I went in for my complete physical. Ended up going through cancer surgeries, radiation therapy, and then working out during the winter time to be able to be ready for 2004. In 2004, I'm just going to mention these places that you're seeing. There's Red Castle Lake, and then here's a picture of Osler Peak from the Rock Creek drainage, and then Amethyst Lake from the Osler Pass, and then to Reconnaissance Lake and Triangle Mountain, and then a trip to Crater Lake through the Andersen Basin coming from down below at Moon Lake, and then but in mid-season 2004 my leg collapsed between trips, and I had to go in for temporary surgery on my motorcycle knee. But and 30 days later I wanted to make one more trip, and so here I am going up Gunsight Pass to bivouac on Kings Peak. And there I went on a day hike and I became deathly sick, but made it back to my camp, laid there while the antibiotic was taking effect, got my picture of Kings Peak, and then I got halfway to the trailhead and camped, and then that night had a heart attack, and miraculously, by the grace of God, I was saved and made it out. And then I was confronted with the challenge of additional challenge of heart problems, and so I worked out in the winter time, and then went into the 2005 season, making a big swing all around the Uinta River Basin, back to near Trail Rider Pass with a little lake where I caught a beautiful brook trout. But first, there's the fifth highest mountain in Utah looms over it, no name, and so I gave it a name. It was Mount Jedediah. And then the brook trout, and then there was a family backpack, and then a trip up on the north slope up from Christmas Meadows to Kermsoo Lake, and then up to Middle Basin and Ryder Lake, and then a trip up Henry's Fork to very remote and mysterious Castle Lake and Cliff Lake, and then on to Kings Peak again, and then a goat trip all the way across the Uintas with my adopted daughter Mahana from Guatemala, with Clay Zimmerman, who invited us, and here we are going out to Island Lake and to the Spirit Lake Lodge where Mahana got her Mama Moose Burger. And then bivouacking up on Mount Baldy near Mirror Lake. I wanted to get some pictures late and early, as you see here. And then I made the first trip in, I think it was 42 years, with my original backpack buddy Ted Packard at our favorite Fern Lake, and then we went cross country to Docks Lake. And then during the winter, in preparation for the 2006 season, I was working out again, of course, at home all winter, and started again up on East Fork, East Granddaddy Saddle, to get another beautiful shot of this incredible sight. And then a trip up from Moon Lake to Atwine Lake and Clements Lake and to East Basin. And then a family backpack to the Granddaddy Basin, and then a trip to the Four Lakes Basin to Cyclone Pass, and over on the east side to remote Thompson Lake and Sea Lion Lake, and then back on Cyclone Pass, looking at lightning over Mount Baldy to the west. And then another trip to Reconnaissance Lake and Triangle Mountain, which is one of the most beautiful, incredible areas in the Uintas, and that's one place I've got to go back to. And then a trip up from Christmas Meadows again on the north slope to where you're seeing Osler Peak, and there we went up to Amethyst Lake and Osler Lake, Tombset Lake. These are off trail, and then the trip up Yellowstone Canyon. You see the Yellowstone Gorge here to Milk Lake, and then cross country to Kings Lake, and from Kings Lake over Bluebill Pass to the Timothy's and Carrot Lakes, and here you're seeing the backside of Mount Jedediah. And then another trip up from Christmas Meadows to McFeeters Lake, where I got a shot of it from one angle, and then I went down and camped up high to get a picture of the whole lake you see here. And then a trip late in the season to up East Fork of Black's Fork to what I call East Fork Pass. I wanted to get to Crater Lake, and I got there, but I became very ill, very sick, and I lay there for a few days waiting for the antibiotic to take effect, and I'd got snowed on already, and this more snow was on its way, and so I had to get out of there. And when I was back up on East Fork Pass, the snow hit me in a real blizzard, and I became very, very deathly sick. Because of my weakened state, I was experiencing actually high altitude sickness and also some heart problems. But I got down and had to call for help. And so a helicopter came in there, picked me up, took me to the University of Utah Hospital, where you see me there, and I checked out all right. But in the process, my football ankle finally wore out, and so that winter I had to go through a surgery, and so my right ankle was held together with 3 screws and a tendon transplant. In the summer of 2007, I had to start wearing a special boot to give support to that ankle. And so I made it to Notch Pass on the first trip, and then another pass into the Granddaddies, and I sidestepped up to where I could get a picture of Granddaddy Lake here because of that ankle. And then I made a trip once again up the Amethyst Lake Trail, but halfway up I took off cross country to visit Salamander Lake, and then a trip up a very remote East Fork or Middle Fork of Black's Fork. In 2 trips up there, I've only seen signs of one other person being in the area, but there I started finding ruins of cabins everywhere, and I started wondering what the heck was going on up there. Well, I eventually learned. And then a trip with my daughter Mahana, we wanted to bivouac up on the East Granddaddy saddle to get some pictures early and late of the Granddaddy Basin. We did, and we got a picture of a young goat. And then a trip up the Red Castle Trail, where I was hit by a monsoon like I have never ever experienced in the Uintas, and it was the closest I have ever come to hyperthermia. But I went prepared. I knew what I was in for, and I was able to survive that all right, and continue up the trail to Red Castle. And got another couple pictures to add to my collection, and then a family backpack again, and then late in the season with my friend Ted up another trip up to East Fork Pass in the very spine of the Uinta Mountains with Mount Buell there in the background, and then late in the season a trip with Ted, one of his sons, and a friend to Mount Baldy. Well, by then my motorcycle knee had worn out, and so I had to have major surgery on the knee, and it was opened up, and somehow they got in there titanium, so I've got a titanium knee on the right side now. And so I went through a lot of therapy there, and working out to not give in again and be able to keep going, learn how to undergo the pain. And then I made in the trip, and I think we're up to what, 2008 are we? But made a trip to Packard Lake and Naturalist Basin, Murat Lake, and then a trip into the Granddaddy Basin again to get to some lakes that I've always loved, and a couple that I've never been to, Marcel Lake with some beautiful fishing, Sunny Lake, and then on to Farney Lake where there's grayling, and then a trip again up Middle Fork of Black's Fork to Bob's Lake, right underneath Tocoana Peak, one of the 5 named 13-foot mountains in Utah. And then a trip up the Bald Mountain, this is different Bald Mountain trail to look down on Bald Lake with my daughter Mahana. And then later I made it. I came at Bald Lake from a different angle up West Fork of Smith Fork to the Uinta guard station, where I met Bob and Teresa, who started really opening my eyes to what all the ruins of that you see on the North Slope are, and it has to do with the tie hackers. In 1867, Irish lumbermen sent into the Uinta Mountains to make by hand with the broad axis railroad ties, millions of them for the Transcontinental Railroad. So there's some great sites up the West Fork of Smith's Fork, including an old Model T truck and a splash dam, and up to Bald Lake. And then a golden anniversary backpack with my original two backpacking buddies, Ted Packard and Charlie Peterson, and we went up to Red Castle, getting some great shots of Lower Red Castle, of East Red Castle, and of course a beautiful fish, incredibly beautiful fish. By then I needed a job to be able to keep me in shape during the winter time, and so I got a job at Reams as a shopping cart herder, doing 7 to 9 miles a day to keep me in shape so I would never have to give in, hopefully. The next season, 2009, I made a trip up from the Center Park Trailhead, and I started experiencing high altitude sickness, and so I had to back off, and I had to learn more about it and do what I had to do to be able to withstand that. In the meantime, I had some low-level trips, hot on the trail of the tie hackers, in a number of areas on the North Slope, including going up the East Fork of Bear River to Alsop Lake. You see the mountain you see in the background there is it's called the Cathedral. And then back, of course, in 2010 to Reams to keep me in shape, and then in the 2010 season a trip again into the Granddaddies to hit a couple lakes I hadn't been to for a long time, Pine Island and Lily Pad and I can't remember, Palisades, and then a trip in search of the golden trout up in the Murdoch Basin area to this is Joan Lake, and then Echo Lake down below, and then a trip in search of Bigfoot, the place where he's been sighted the most, up Little East Fork of Black's Fork, and I went off trail there and was really in the wilderness, where I thought, well, maybe I could find him there. Of course, I didn't find him, or he didn't find me, whichever. And then trips hot on going after the tie hackers again, into Wyoming, to looking for some ghost town, the Piedmont ghost town, and then the old Black's Fork commissary, and then in search of what was called the liveliest, if not the most wicked town in America, Beartown, which grew to 2,000 people just overnight, and almost as soon disappeared after a bloody fight between the vigilantes and the bad guys, which ended up being the bloodiest battle in the history of Wyoming between white people. I looked for the spot, and I found it. You can see in the skyline there, I found the exact spot where it was. And I learned about Tom Beartown Smith, or Bear River Smith, famous for trying to quell the rebellion there. But he wasn't able to do it, and I'll tell all these stories in the book that I'm going to write. And then I was dealing with the tie hackers again. There was a Hilliard flume that carried lumber products all the way down into Wyoming, and there was a feeder flume which I wanted to find remnants of. As far as I could tell, nobody had ever taken pictures of any of them, so I went into the lodgepole forests looking for remnants of the Howe feeder flume, and after going through some tough times in the forest there with a lot of down timber and all, I finally found remnants of the flume, and this was from the 1800s, as recognized by the square nails that you see here. Round nails that we know today were not actually invented until about 1910, and so square nails designated this as an old site. And I came back with a few samples. There were actually 80 tons of these nails used to put together the Hilliard and the Howe feeder or flumes. and so I have some souvenirs from there. Then one of the drainages that I've never been to, Beaver Creek on the northeast slope of the Uintas, and so I went up west fork of Beaver Creek to Gilbert Lake, and you see Gilbert Mountain, which is the third highest mountain in the state of Utah, and so I visited that area and got some good pictures. And during the 2011 season, wintered back at Reams working, and then the 2011 summer season, but summer hardly never came because it was a heavy winter, and I only was able to make a couple of trips, one of them into the Garfield Basin, where I had quite a survival experience. You see the mountains, beautiful Uinta Mountains spreading ahead of me, and I was reading a book about the conquest of Mexico, and it was incredible what those guys went through, and I got some inspiration from them. But there I used my spot tracker a lot, and this is another thing that I think everybody should take with them. Here you can see when you send an OK signal or a help signal, there's an immediate email sent to the friends you have programmed into the system, and they can hit a link and they can see exactly where you are, as you see here in these views from Google Earth looking down on the Redcastle area. Then I went on quite a tour of a tie hacker tour, seeking sites in a number of areas and going up some of the roughest roads in the world, and I found a whole bunch of different ruins and photographed them. There's actually 7 reports on my website about the tie hackers that you can go to learn more, including Suicide Park, where 3 of the tie hackers just weren't able to take it any longer. They got old and they couldn't work anymore and they couldn't do anything else, and so they took their own lives. And so that's on the North Slope. Then we come to the one of the last places I haven't been to, and that's the Crow Basin, and I started up there and got up high and got where I could see it, but it was just too rough a country for me to manipulate. And then all of a sudden it started raining, and a real heavy downpour, and the whole survival story is on my website. But I came very close again to hypothermia by getting wet, and then the lightning hit, and it was hitting right on top of me. The lightning and the thunder were the same instant. It was just right there all around me, and I took refuge under some lower pines, and there were just little wavy wisps of electricity dancing all around me, as you see here. But I made it out from there, and that's one place I still have to get to. Went back to work at Reams to be able to do so, and had projected trips for 2012, 4 of them you see there, one of them being the Crow Basin again. But that's when, of course, I had trouble with my good leg and went through the back surgery, and so now I'm hoping to be able to do 150 miles. I didn't make it that summer, 2012. I hope to be able to do it in the summer of 2013 for these scheduled trips. And here I am, I'm working out, and you can see everything I'm doing to be able to keep in shape and be able to meet my goals. In this first clip, you can see me walking, trying to walk normally, but you can see all of a sudden my leg sort of collapsing right there. It weakens and collapses, and you can see it again here if you look carefully. There it goes. So that's what I have to cope with. And as I have explained in other videos, I work out while I'm watching a Jazz or BYU basketball game, doing squats like you see there, walking around at the back of my back, always. With bad weather, I head for the BYU Smith field house.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi,
wow!
And there, of
looking
course,
great.
I enjoy everybody immensely. But here I come. I jog on the straightaways. I usually walk around the curves, but then every 4 laps I go up the stairs, the stadium stairs, and I start doing the benches. I go up, and then I crisscross down This, of course, simulates like being up in the mountains, up and down, and of course it helps me develop my balance, along with, of course, strength. As I have explained, I've found that by trying to correct my duck walk and turn my toes in as much as I can, I pretty well do away with the weakening of the leg and the collapsing action, and so a lot of the pain goes away too. So I try my best to train my toes to point inward more. I hope that if I work at it long enough, I'll be able to eventually straighten this out, and then I won't have to think about it so much. But of course, when I relax and go back to the old duck walk, of course, all of a sudden my leg weakens and collapses, and it hurts more, and it reminds me I've got to focus on correcting that default mistake. Of course, to get tougher, I'm going outdoors more now, and of course, outdoors I always have the pack on my back. It has 40 pounds in it. Before I had this problem with my left leg, in the wintertime I would have 60 pounds in that pack, but I took 20 out because of the back surgery, and I find that with that 40 pounds on my back, I do a lot better. I don't have the pain, or very little, and of course I have to walk very carefully, very deliberately, and always remembering to point my toes inward as much as I can, and I pretty well 100% avoid the weakening collapse of my left leg. So this has been an amazing discovery, and of course it's had me thinking of, if I had discovered this perhaps before the surgery, I maybe could have avoided a lot of expense. But so I've been walking quite a bit up in this area, up towards the mouth of Hollow Creek Canyon, on what they call the Parkway. But then in the last few days, and I don't have video of this, I decided that I would start going up the steep hills where there's all these giant homes, and so I've been doing that lately. In fact, yesterday or Saturday, I guess it was, I was coming back down from way up on the north side of the canyon, where there's some giant homes, and the fellow all of a sudden stopped and he said, "Are you all right?" I guess I looked pretty bad. It happened to be Byron Casper. I've emailed him, and I'd like to learn whether he is part of the Billy Casper family. I'm sure he is. He's a golf instructor, so he must be. But there we are. This is where I hope to be this upcoming summer, and thanks again for checking up on my efforts to fake not being a cripple and make a comeback for my 78th year and finish my How You in the Wilderness project. Appreciate all your support and your prayers. Check out my website for more information. And I can't finish this without thanking again Jonathan Jousey for these marvelous aerial photographs that I've used in my videos.